This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Simply talking about the situation that we are in, our problems, our challenges, can help people in lots of different ways. As they say, a problem shared is a problem halved. And that's the case for mentally tough people too. Yep, that's right. We all find talking and expressing our thoughts and feelings useful. So I'm hoping this episode is going to go on to bust a myth. The myth that mental toughness is simply all about getting your head down, gritting your teeth, getting on with things, manning up, because mental toughness is not about that at all. So why is talking and expressing yourself helpful? Well, I'm going to go on now and share 5 reasons why. Number 1, it's a nice feeling. If we're honest with ourselves, to be listened to be supported, to be encouraged, makes you feel not alone. And genuinely, it makes you feel pretty good about yourself. Number 2, by talking about things, it can help you move from feeling helpless to a place where you feel like you've got some control, more certainty over a situation. Thirdly, a key element of positive mental health or psychological well-being is that feeling of being connected to someone or people. It actually sends positive signals to our brain and our body. Fourthly, if you experience a difficult life event, perhaps a death of a loved one, a relationship breakup, or a move somewhere which doesn't necessarily work out, perhaps even an injury, a serious one, the likelihood is that you are going to find simply talking about it, expressing yourself, helpful. It's going to help you to deal better with the situation. You're going to become less emotionally reactive to the stresses that you face. And this is a part of emotion-focused coping techniques, which psychologists and counsellors often use. Lastly, though, number 5, many people actually assume that solution-focused coping strategies are the best way to manage stress. This cuts out the emotion, if you like. And people assume also by doing so, they're going to cut out stress. Now, strategies when talking to people receiving help, we would look at things like time management, perhaps how you communicate with other people, and start trying to make some changes to the way you go about things. And these, again, are very, very useful. But it is also important to realize that the stress will always be there. So a nice combination of actually allowing people to express their emotions, how they feel, alongside solution-focused coping strategies is what I would advise. And in the macho world of sport or high-level business, solution-focused strategies are certainly a more popular thing. However, the emotional side should be taken care of, otherwise it could come to bite people in the backside. And in this short clip now with Peter Ramage, a former Premier League footballer, we're going to emphasize how much a strong support system and actually talking about things is so important for an elite professional athlete. Thinking about criticism, you mentioned before, you talked about criticism from your teammates, potentially even from managers. Obviously today with social media and having criticism from your own fans, how do you deal with that?
That was a tough one for me because, social media back in, we're talking when I left Newcastle was 2008. It was the beginning of social media. The platform isn't what it is now. It isn't the kind of intense scrutiny amongst players and fans that, you can just basically, you can write what you want nowadays. You could still do so then, but it wasn't as harsh probably back then as it was now. So I came into the beginning of that kind of era. To be honest with you, when fans were giving me crap on the sidelines, it didn't really affect me because, like we talked about just before my debut, I kind of got in the zone with games. So it didn't really affect me. But then when social media started to come in and I was getting active on it, and, you know, I was reading all the comments, you know, Ramage is crap, he's the worst player, etc., etc. I was reading them more than the ones that, you know, obviously the complimentary ones. And it was tough. I mean, footballers are still human beings, and, you know, they still have feelings, they still get hurt by comments, they still, you know, shrink when they see things like that. I mean, it's something that I learned to have to deal with. Some comments, that did really affect me, and it affected my confidence as well going into games, that I don't want to make a mistake because, you know, Joe Blogs is going to, you know, be writing crap to me on Twitter, or he's going to be writing crap to me on Facebook or whatever it is, or Instagram and all this. And I was like, you know, I kind of went into my shell a little bit. But then I started talking to psychologists after my second ACL injury. But, you know, the mental barrier trying to get through, you know, another major injury, or my second major injury. And, you know, one of the things we talked about was social media and, you know, starting to build a mental block. And, you know, now I read them and I still read comments, you know, I was this, I was that. And I'm just like, you know what it is? I don't really give a shit, because at the end of the day, you know, as crap as I must have been to be a footballer, for you to make a comment, and how crap are you because you didn't even make it. So, you know, these are obviously football fans who had dreams to be a footballer. Well, yeah, I made it as a footballer. You didn't. So what does that say about yourself? So I just kind of batter everything off now, and I kind of try and use it as fuel to work harder myself as a coach and as a person, to make sure that, you know, I kind of turn whatever percentage it is negativity into more positivity.
I like that. You mentioned about the ACL injury. Do you want to just talk to us about that, how it happened, and then the process overcoming it?
Yeah, I mean, I got my first one in my last year at contract when I was at Newcastle, and that was a tough period for me, because I was starting to really get into the team. Sam Allardyce had just taken over at Newcastle, and you know, I was getting games and I was getting, you know, opportunities, and then that injury happened and my season was done. And I didn't really know the process that I was going to go through. I mean, ACL injuries weren't as common back then as they are now. Michael Owen had literally just, I think, the year before, had gone obviously through the same process of getting injured with England at the World Cup, and he was still at the football club, and he was brilliant with me, because he kind of just gone through the process. His was more severe than what mine was, but he was a great shoulder of advice to, you know, and he was one of the first ones every morning coming in. How are you doing today? You all right? Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks, Mike. Says, hey, listen, get through your day, and it'll be one day closer. And I had somebody of that ilk to kind of look up to, as to think, well, yeah, I can get back from this injury, because if he can get back from that, and his was 10 times worse than mine, then there's a hell of a chance that I'm going to get back. So that was great for me. But then the second one I done at QPR was the year that we got promoted, and that was more tougher to get through, because I seen the guys winning week in, week out. They're coming in, and you know, they were celebrating wins, celebrating, you know, ended up celebrating winning the championship. And I mean, it was 9 years ago on Thursday, to the day that they won the league, and there was a picture with me with the trophy, and I just feel, you know, almost ashamed that I know I've got the trophy in my hands, because I contributed to 4 games out of, was it 46, and all of it was, you know, missed through an injury. And so I had a real mental struggle over that period. And again, it was, you know, trying to speak to people to come through that process. That again, I thought, you know, I've had one injury on one knee, and then I've done my other knee. Am I going to be the same person? Am I going to be the same player? So it was a real struggle to kind of get through that process. We just had my daughter as well, so I had family issues going on. I had a young family, and everything was kind of building up. And you know, it took me a long time to get over that barrier, and to continue to try and play. There was a lot of dark days, but you know, I managed to get through it with the help and advice again of my teammates and the staff, but also, you know, people outside of football that I could, you know, really just speak to about it.
In a way, it was an emotional roller coaster at that point. Having the support system around you sounds as though was key.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a wonderful family around me, and I'm blessed to have people who, my dad's, being an international rugby referee, he's been privy to a lot of things on the sporting environment. And he's, he was, whilst they were up in Newcastle and I was down in London, they were always, I think I spoke to him about 2-3 times a day. Same with my mum. Obviously my wife was absolutely unbelievable throughout the process too, having to deal with a young kid and a guy on crutches who couldn't move around. She was a godsend and has been throughout, our time together. She's been incredible support to me to allow me to do what I want to do, because we've moved here, there and everywhere. We're over here in Phoenix, Arizona, and she's moved with me. So if I hadn't had that support from people around me, then I wouldn't have been able to do the thing that I love and get through the tough times.
And now, having listened to the conversation I had with Peter, it was apparent to me that having the support of his teammates, he mentioned Michael Owen when he had one serious injury at Newcastle. He talked about the staff. He talked about outsiders away from the club. Importantly, talked about his family and his partner. Now, this emphasised the point to me that professional footballers, professional athletes are human beings after all. And they need support. Support is so, so vital in order to ensure that we maintain positive mental health. Peter talked about different challenges, dealing with criticism through social media, which obviously now is a lot worse. Athletes suffer an awful lot of abuse than perhaps 5 years, 10 years ago. Injuries. Injuries are a big part of different sports, and Peter had his fair share. He moved clubs into different environments, different changing rooms. He talked about playing in London for Queen's Park Rangers, about having a young family. All of these factors can have an impact on how we feel about ourselves, how we go out there and perform. So as a sports psychologist, when you're supporting athletes in these situations, it's really important to understand that part of our training is linked to building and developing the professional relationship. In any walk of life, without trust in a relationship, it's going to make life very, very difficult. So developing that trust with the client is hugely important. And this doesn't matter if you're working with a person who's high in mental toughness or not so high, who's mentally sensitive. Trust is such a big factor. And how we go about that, we look to display empathy. We have a warmth and a genuineness about the way we communicate. And obviously, these go on to link with personal qualities. And perhaps for some people, it's not something that they're born with, that they have to develop. So as sports psychologists, it's very important for us to look in the mirror and seek to learn and develop these qualities, because going forward, we also have to look at appearing genuine and authentic. And there's lots of research out there which highlights that these personal qualities and a congruence in these relationships with clients is so, so important. They're big, big qualities for a sports psychology practitioner, because as well as shaping, building, maintaining the positive relationships with the client, it also then naturally leads us to the process of behavior change, which, let's face it, that's what it's all about. We're trying to help clients just gradually change their behaviors by listening to them, by empowering them, helping them to recognize that they have the answers within themselves. We gently nudge and challenge the client so that they can go on and make better decisions. And in my experience of working with athletes who've gone through some personal difficulties, I'm going to stick now with the injury route. I've worked with a number of people, a number of athletes. I've counselled them who've had serious injuries. And those that are familiar with the sports psychology literature might be familiar with self-determination theory. This talks about autonomy, competence, and relatedness. These are the key basic psychological needs in order to maintain positive psychological well-being, positive mental health. So when I'm counselling athletes, I'll always be considering these things. So autonomy, I'll be thinking, how do I help the athlete gain some sort of control over their situation? Competence, how can we help them gain that feeling of competence? Often when an athlete's injured, depending where they are on a journey, they can feel pretty helpless. So it might be that we point them towards coaching badges in their particular sport, or a different sport for that matter. We look at other interests. How can they be more competent, say, playing the guitar or a musical instrument? Another idea might be to get them to look at post-sport. Because let's face it, unless you're involved in professional golf, most professional athletes' careers are quite short. So looking at qualifications outside of their sport that's going to enhance their career post-sport can be very, very beneficial. This is not for every athlete, but a much higher but it is becoming more common. Then the last one, we've got relatedness. This is all about being connected to other people, perhaps to the team, the support staff, the club. So encouraging them to interact with the team, traveling to matches, being around in training, certainly not isolating themselves. This can be very, very difficult for athletes. However, if you can get a nice balance between the three, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, these three psychological needs can then really help you as an athlete feel a little bit better in yourself. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be pretty difficult when you are injured and you can't do what you love. If you bear those three psychological needs in mind, then, as I say, it can help you. And to illustrate the point, I'm going to share another little clip, and this one is with Brendan Pearson, a former professional footballer who talks about injuries, career-threatening and career-ending injuries, and how he dealt with the situation. We'll move on and talk about injuries, because I know you've had your big frustrations throughout the years, haven't you? And it's ended up where you sadly have had to retire at a young age. Are you okay to talk about some of the bigger injuries you've had?
Yeah, 100%. So my first real big injury, but I had a thing called spondylolisthesis when I was younger, when I was about 12 or 14, which is just a slip vertebra in my back. So I was kind of in and out of football for a while with that. I think it was about 2 years. But my first kind of serious injury was when I was 16. That was my first kind of surgery that I had. So I had my right meniscus. I had a tear in it when I was 16 years old, it was a really out the blue injury. I just started playing a game and my knee swelled up. But I think I jarred it a few weeks before, and I think the surgeon said it was related to that. But anyway, I was out for about 3 months with that, 3 or 4 months, which isn't too bad. But as a young lad, it was me leaving school, going into full-time football. It was obviously a bit frustrating starting the season out that way, missing the first 3 months of the season, which is pre-season, so it's the perfect time to get experience, get games. And then moving on from that, I always had a few little niggle injuries. I broke my hand when I was 18, so that's like 6 to 8 weeks I was out with that. And then my two most recent injuries, which have kind of been the things that have stopped me from pursuing professional football again, was I had Patellar Tendonitis in both my knees, but it kind of got to the point where it's actually chronic, so I'm kind of always going to have to deal with it now. I had loads and loads of treatment. I had injections. I had what they call stripping, which is like the strip away bits of your tendon. Electric acupuncture treatment, which sounds delightful. It isn't at all. It's really horrible. Surgery on my left knee. And I ended up actually being out for about 2 years with that, when it was only meant to be a 5 month recovery post surgery. So that was frustrating. And then moving on to my last injury, which is kind of the one that stopped my professional career most recently, was I had a full ankle reconstruction. So I tore 3 of my lateral ankle ligaments, partially tore my peroneal tendon, which is just down the back of your heel, and had a bit of cartilage damage as well. So I had that tidied up and sorted, and I just kind of got myself back fit from that, and then lockdown hit.
Right.
Yeah, so I've had a few. Just thought I'd get them all out of the way straight away.
Obviously, you know the treatment table quite well, and like having to go through the rehab, to say the least. How tough is that to go through rehab, when especially the longer term ones?
Yeah, I think when you've got an end goal, like an injury, you might have an operation. They might say, right, 5 months time, you'll be back fit and playing. You've got that light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. But the frustrating thing that I found was because of my knee injury. They told me it was going to be 5 months, and then it got the 5 months, and I could see I wasn't really getting anywhere. That's the frustrating thing. I was always quite good at coping with injuries. I don't know if it was because I had them a lot, but I always kind of thought, right, I'm just going to work day by day, see it as an opportunity to get fitter in the gym, work on other things, and not get too bogged down, because I can only control. Well, I can't just clip my fingers and then my knee's going to be fine. So just coming in day by day working. But like I said, the main frustrating thing was me, because I didn't know when I was going to get back fit. It was just kind of a day by day. Oh, how are you feeling today? We'll try this sort of thing. But obviously, the other frustrating side is you're missing out on so much, and you're watching other people kind of skip ahead of you and getting extra days of training, extra games in, extra exposure with the first team manager or going out on loan. And obviously missing out with the kind of the training banter, the training crap with the lads. You're not feeling too much of a part of the team, even though you've got the dressing room where you can speak to the lads, but you're missing out on training, which is a big part of it as well. So there's loads of different aspects that can be frustrating.
So I can imagine emotionally that's pretty tough at times then.
Yeah, it can. It's just I think I was fortunate that I was very positive minded. Where I think a lot of lads will struggle. Not to say that I'm like amazing in any way whatsoever, like not at all. But like I was always positive minded. I enjoyed the gym aspect of it as well, which I think I was very lucky. I know a lot of lads hate being in the gym. They hate doing bike sessions. They hate lifting weights. They hate all that sort of stuff. But I was very fortunate that I had a passion for that as well, which kind of helped me through the process massively. But it's still frustrating. You're there to do a job, which is play football, and you can't do that.
Exactly. That's why you enjoy, and
exactly.
Where you have lots of fun. So I suppose what are the key little things then when you're injured to help yourself through that process? What would you say to that?
Yeah, for me was once they interacted with the team, like 100% staying interact with the team. Like if the lads are going for food after training or something, try and go. Which was another, actually, just to go off topic. Like the thing about being injured is you do long days, so the lads might finish training at 1 o'clock. Say they've done their session in the morning, you'd still be there till like 4 o'clock. So you're missing that kind of, if the lads go for food or something after training or whatever, you're missing that. But go back to the point anyway. So stay interacted with the lads, like have a bit of chat with them in the change room and stuff. Make sure you go into the games, being involved with the team beforehand, which I think is massive as well. That build up to the game, like support the lads, go around, give them high fives beforehand, celebrate with them after, or just be with them if you get beat, always be around them. And then try and find a routine that kind of gets you going, because I know it's like being injured and you go in for treatment and then you've got to do your stretching, your rehab, your boring exercises, which nobody wants to do. Just get a routine to kind of keep you going, because you can't just end up sitting there and not doing anything and thinking about how terrible it is that you're inside and everyone else is outside playing football, sort of thing. The best thing is just interacting with people and sticking to your routine and just working hard and get your head down, because at the end of the day, if you know you've worked hard and done everything to get back fit, you're going to go to sleep happy.
So 3 things in there. So you've got, like you say, that sort of interacting with a team and being involved with them, routine, and then being positive, that committed attitude to it all, having that, I suppose, that belief that you can turn things around over time.
100%, yeah.
So it sounds like your positive mindset, just in general around things, and that inner beliefs being a big help for you over the years.
Massively, yeah. I've just been very fortunate, but like I said before, I think I was lucky that I enjoyed the kind of the gym based environment as well, which would have helped me massively. Because if I'm trying to think, if there was something that I didn't enjoy doing, like if it's like me going into a different job and having to be like a plumber or something like that. If someone loves plumbing, it's great because they can just do that forever. But it's like, if I go and do it, I'd be sick of my life. Like I was just fortunate, I guess, to have that passion, which I think it grew from being injured so much and being in that gym environment, which has obviously took me to where I am today.
Yeah, we'll wrap up shortly. We can just look like the retirement side of things. How did that come about, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so my decision to kind of not pursue the professional game was kind of before. So I was playing in Scotland for a team called Morton, which is where I had my last ankle injury. So before that, I literally said to myself, look, this is going to be my last shot, because I had a trouble with injuries in the past and signing for teams and contracts falling through. So football was kind of, it drained me a little bit just because of everything that I'd been through. But then I said to myself, right, this is my last shot, give it 100%. And then obviously the injury happened, and it was quite a really serious one. And I was thinking, is it worth, because of obviously I wanted to pursue a career in the fitness industry down the line, whether it be after my football career or during it, because you can probably do it at the same time. I always knew, is it worth the risk of me going full-time professional again with the amount of injuries that I've had and the potential that I could either make my injuries worse or get another one, which first would be like bad for me, like mentally. It would be tough for me to go through another kind of long-term injury, and also like for longevity in terms of the fitness career that I want to do I want to do it? So anyway, had my injury in August, and then I just decided that was going to be it full-time professional football. And then I pursued my personal training career in December, when I first started getting my proper job, and then been doing online stuff as well since then, but also looking to try and play part-time football because I do miss the game a little bit as well. So We'll see how that goes. Like you say, on the back of injuries, potentially chasing going in the fitness industry has been something that's been on your radar for a while as well. Yeah. It's always been, like I said, it's always been a passion, and I've done my PT qualification while I was injured at Newcastle. So I've done that about 4 or 5 years ago while I was at Newcastle. So I always had it at the back of my mind that I wanted to pursue that passion at some point. Yeah. I can imagine it was still quite tough emotionally though, just to actually pull the plug and say, right, I'm not going to. Yeah. Like I went through a difficult period afterwards. I think to call it, you lost your head kind of thing. I had that, like, it was probably about a week after my operation. So I mentioned it in my podcast after when I had my injury and I got the club let me go, and it was in between having my operation, about a week before my operation. So I ended up going on holiday somewhere and spending, like, just pretty much going for a drinking holiday and just spending too much money. And then that kind of triggered me to think, right, I'm better than this kind of thing. Like, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. So, like, pick yourself up and get going. So that was kind of a little trigger. So I was lucky that I had that kind of experience that flipped the switch for me. And then since then, I've just kind of built myself back up to the point I'm at today. So, like, it could have went the other way. I could have just kept on going down that downward spiral and just kept going to parties and drinking and whatever. You can go any route. You can go even worse than that. So I was just fortunate that it did flip a switch in me, and then things have went from there. It sounds like you're down there again, that you probably this work ethic, that confidence, the focus, things like that have probably really, like, helped you. Not have been easy at times, and you've got to go through the bad times to then turn it around, like you mentioned. But that's probably been really helpful for you. Yeah, it definitely has helped me. I think I've got like OCD with getting like training or something like that. I don't know what it is, but that sort of mindset where I need to get something done each day or else I'm not happy. I'm pleased to announce a new sponsor for the show, Chimera Sport, who produce a range of sportswear and equipment to enhance performance and recovery, reducing injury occurrences. You'll find on the product section of our website, www.sport-excellence.co.uk/products, access to our own Chimera Sport shop. I've personally tested some of the garments, and you'll find that the infrared sportswear has been clinically tested too. So it's great for fitness enthusiasts and athletes who want to push harder, go further, and recover quicker. Naturally, the conversation with Brendan was tough at times. I couldn't help but feel his pain of not being able to do, ideally, what he would like to be doing, and largely because of factors outside of his control with injuries, which obviously resulted in him retiring from going on to play for professional football at a young age. But what struck me about Brendan
was his can-do attitude, which is something associated with mental toughness. It's clearly helped him so much. So if you're in that boat where injuries and different circumstances have given you a rough deal, I'm really hoping this episode will help you. And I'm going to go on now and share a little exercise that you could do to have a positive contribution on your well-being and mental health. I'm sure you've heard the term control the controllables. It's used quite a lot now in sport. And this is exactly what this exercise is all about. What I'd like you to do on a sheet of paper is draw a line down the middle of the sheet. And on the left-hand side, I'd like you to make a note of factors outside of your control. And on the right-hand side, make a note of factors inside of your control. And if we think about factors outside of your control, there'll be things like what actually happened, the fact that you are injured, but you can't control what's gone on in the past, why the injury occurred. You can't control the type of injury that you've got and the treatment plan that the physios, consultants have advised. You can't control any government guidelines around COVID and the fact that maybe you can't access a gym. You can't control what other people, your teammates, are actually doing. You can't control what other people are advising you. Because let's be honest, some people, although they might have your best interests at heart, they might actually be coming up with some unhelpful ideas and suggestions. You can't predict the future, when you're going to be back playing football or whatever your chosen sport is. You can't control whether your team's actually playing well at the moment, because I can imagine that's frustrating for some players if their team's struggling and you know you could make a big difference. There's so many factors that are outside of your control, yet it is so easy to spend lots of time, lots of energy and emotion on those factors. So what I'd like you to do now on the other side is think about what's under your control. This is clearly something Brendan was able to do very, very easily. So you can control whether you seek professional advice, and you can control whether you listen and act on that advice. So your attitude, your application towards your rehab is something you can control. When you're in the gym, if you think about what I mentioned a little bit earlier before Brendan's short clip, when I talked about competence, you can seek to be 100% competent and fully focused and committed to that rehab plan when you're doing your stretches or your strengthening exercises. You can also choose to go at it 50%. But let's be honest, if you're going to spend 5 or 10 minutes, why not do it at your max? It can only help you going forward. Also, something you can control, which links again to my previous advice, is the thing about being connected to your team. So you can choose whether you spend time with the team or isolate yourself. You can choose whether you're going to be a cheerleader for the team or walk into the dressing room with your head down. So go on, I encourage you to continue thinking of things that you can control. It's really going to help you get into a positive frame of mind. And this little exercise, it doesn't have to be just around injuries. It could be around any situation at all. If you've been released from a club, if you've had a breakup in a relationship, if you've got a difficult relationship with someone inside your club, whatever the situation, this whole thing about the controllables is so effective. And certainly in the next clip, when former professional footballer Julian Dowe talks about social support and getting into professional football as a youngster, having a lack of understanding of the situation, the process, the system, he talks about playing overseas, doing this type of exercise with him as a practitioner, he would find so helpful. So I'll let you tune in again and listen to this next short bite.
Really, and I was never really fussed by going to, sign for a club. And it was only when other people started signing, I'm thinking, maybe I should sign for someone. And then I ended up signing for Everton. And they were really good to me initially because the guy who's the youth development officer was an ex-teacher. So he was going around watching Trafford schoolboys, which we were played for. We're probably one of the most successful teams in the northwest of England. And he was going on to these games, seeing these other players, and they had like the entourage, the parent, the gran, the uncle, the aunt, the brother, the mother. And they just saw me, without being funny, scoring all the goals, playing really well. And then when the game's finished, all the other cars go off and they just see me traipsing off, walking down the street. And then they sort of like followed us and said, what's going on with this kid? Because And then they watched us a few times, and there was no parents to even speak to say, who's this kid? Who do we need to speak to? And then this guy sort of like knew, the family dynamic and sort of like the background. And he made it really easy for me to go to Everton, where he looked after us. They'd get us all clothes and kit. They'd give us, expenses to make sure I was getting to school and eating well, for my mum, and, made sure I travelled. They used to cover, put me in a taxi from Manchester to Liverpool, for the late games. So I wasn't travelling. During the day, it was fine on the train, but the late ones had put us to make sure I got home all right. And he understood. And even when you used to stay in these things called digs, when you go in the school holidays, and all the other kids would stay in the normal digs, and I'd stay at the manager's house, so because he'd really put his arm around us and really gave us that bit of, understanding and nurturing. And then unfortunately, 2 events coincided. I got injured playing a game, and he just got cleared out. All the backroom staff went, and I got injured playing one game, and I thought, that didn't feel right. I got a real strong whack, and I went going to the club for a few weeks for treatment, and travelling down on the train, they said it's a muscle spasm in my back. It would go as quick as it came. And then the problem was, it transpired that I'd fractured my spine. I didn't even know about it, and I was playing on it for a few weeks, and by then I'd already left. I've already asked to leave Man City, leave Everton, and they were saying, yeah, fine, because the new people had never seen me play. They just seen injured on my form. And then when Man City got wind of me being free, they would sign me like a shot, and they took me to see the physio, and the physio said, yeah, you got a muscle spasm, but I want to know why a 15-year-old got a muscle spasm the size of an egg in his back. And that's when they got me x-rayed straight away, and that's when I found out I had the fracture. So I was in a back brace for about 9 months with almost like a straight jacket with metal rods around the back and like a full corset. And they still offered me a contract, even a pro contract. And the manager was going, you must be some player, mate. If we signed, this was Peter Reid saying, he couldn't believe that they were offering me a contract. And he said, Gaffer, if we don't sign him, somebody else will. And during that period of me, convalescing and getting better, your head starts wondering, because, the club are keeping me involved in everything. It was great. I used to go to the home games. I was still at school. But unfortunately, again, that support base made people getting in my ear saying, you don't want to play for City. They don't give, young black players a chance, and this, that, and the other. And then you start looking back at the players that come through, like your Dave Bennett's, your Roger Palmer's, your Gary Bennett's, your Clive Wilson's, your Beckfords. I'm thinking, yeah, they don't. But not realising the game was sort of like changing, and they had big plans for me. So I asked to leave there. And again, that was, if I have one regret, that was probably the only regret I have in football, the fact that I left Man City at the time that I did.
Where did you go to?
Well, again, I came quite disillusioned with it. I actually went to college. I actually registered to go college and I never did, but I was just thinking I didn't want to be in football, and again, just all over the place. And I went to do the open day, and then I'm sat there and they're talking to me, and I'm there thinking, I don't want to do this either. And then I got offered a chance to go to Wigan. I went on trial at Wigan. I was at school, finished school, got on the train straight from school, and played a reserve game. At half time, I got brought on. Within 10 minutes later, I got brought off. I'm almost in tears, thinking, what have I done wrong here? I'm only on 10 minutes. And the manager was watching the first team manager guy called Brian Hamilton, and he just came down the steps and says, look, see enough with a 2-year pro contract, do you? And I says, absolutely.
So when you mentioned about the injury at that age, I know as career progressed, you had further injuries. Did you find that it was difficult to return from injury? Did it impact on your confidence?
No, to be fair, Dave, at that time, you're a kid, you're bulletproof in your head. You're invincible. In fact, it's quite tough. I thought, as Action Man, that I've had a broken bone, I'm going to bounce back. And you come back, and I was always a very big self-motivator, so my confidence was never on the wane, but my understanding of the situation of not being in football, or the whole football game, became a bit blurred because I didn't have the mental, I'm saying the mental tools to deal with it, the doubt. And it wasn't doubt about my ability, it was doubt about the system. And again, because I didn't have anybody there translating that system for me, or being a conduit between the club and me, and the club wouldn't tell me anything because I'm 16, and that's where there was the problem. But never with the injury at that stage. It was never a problem with the injury. It was more about how I was going to fit into the professional game, and the resilience, because the game was changing. I've gone to Wigan with a very, very big ego, and an ego, 8 times out of 10 I'll back up, which you can do at youth level. It's only when you start going into a senior dressing room, and these senior players, they think, who's this blooming so and so. And And that's when you don't realise how impactful people's attitudes in the dressing room and the influence of senior players can have on a young player, because the manager's got to deal with the senior players before he deals with the young players.
So if you'd had like a support network around where you could, I suppose, express how you are feeling and just talk about things, you would have found that helpful at that stage.
Absolutely. If you know, because and the things that were being present, the things that were naturally presenting themselves, I would have had somebody explaining, this is a bit different. Like, for instance, I'd be at school and I'd get a knock on the door, and there'd be the football club there, generally, either Man City or Everton when I was at the time, and they're saying, Julian, the physio wants to see you. And I'm going, I've only seen the physio the other day. What's the problem? And then they'd end up taking you down to Umbro, and you get a bag full of gear, or you end up going training with like the reserve team at school. And I was thinking that was normal. And people, if you had a parent saying, no, son, they're taking you out of school, you're training with the first team. I was thinking, that's just a game of football. Where are the rest of the lads? Why aren't they coming? The rest of my teammates. I really didn't grasp the situation.
You talked as well a little bit about like senior players in the dressing room before there. How did that go on to impact on yourself and the way you felt about yourself as a footballer?
Yeah, the senior players, we're talking around 92 when I broke into, I made my debut for the first team for Wigan at 16, and the game's just changed, and this is like 1992. And these players who've had great careers, when I say great careers, long careers, not necessarily, the most illustrious, but, good, strong careers. And as the game's changing, they could see, at 16, 17, when I signed my pro contract, I was on a bit, as good a money as they were for their career straight away. I had a boot sponsor, deal. Again, none of them had that. And I'm like, they're thinking, what's going on here? And they knew they could potentially try and break you psychologically, because they knew, it's dog eat dog world, but they could try and break the normal 16, 17-year-old. But again, as I said, my shoulders were as broad as the time. I backed myself 100% in my ability, which again goes well until it goes wrong, and then they're on to you like a ton of bricks. So you could do 5 runs, 5 shots, and the one you miss, you flash so-and-so, you're this, that's why you're not going to make it. And then that's when the doubt comes, that's when they start putting doubt, and then it becomes really a brick wall. And eventually, I remember at one stage, you got to the point where the youth team manager was really, really doing me over. It was like bringing me in. As a pro player, you're contracted to the club 7 days a week. As a YTS player, you're only contracted to the club 5 days a week. So they used to bring me in on my days off. There was no day off for me. They used to make me come in and just run around the pitch one lap and send me home, knowing it cost me a load of money to get there on the train. And that was the kind of thing they were trying to break us, because the youth team manager, he had a great track record signing players, and the first team manager signed me, so he felt like his nose had been put out of joint. He's been overlooked, overridden. So when the first team manager got the job he got the Northern Ireland job, it was just open season. The blue-eyed boy, his safety net's gone, and it was open season. And I actually walked out at one stage. I said, I don't want to be here. And I literally went off for about 4 or 5 weeks, just stayed at home. And I didn't want to go back. And then one of the senior players, who was a decent player, played for England under 21s. He played in the first division. And he said, look, Julian, you're going to wreck your career here. Don't let them beat you. You come back, good is always good. So be good as a player. So I came back and I got my head down, and I really, they made me play. I was a forward. They made me play right wing back, like in the reserves and stuff. But I remember in the first sort of like 6 games of the reserves, I scored like a goal a game from right back. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't the greatest league in the world, and I was decent, but still, and they still wouldn't put me in the first team. I couldn't get myself back in, so I said, look, I've got no future here. And that's when I literally walked away. It was coming towards the end of the season, and I remember the youth team manager saying to me, look, I'm not coming in tomorrow. And he goes, we'll sack you. I said, whatever you want to do, I'm not coming in. And I just walked out, and again, didn't come back. And then the PFA intervened, and again, they're saying, look, you're going to wreck yourself. And the club are fining me 2 weeks' wages. Then I get paid for a week, get fined 2 weeks' wages, paid for a week, because I can only fine you 2 weeks at a time as a breach. And the PFA eventually stepped in when the season finished, because they said, do you want a fee for him? Because if you want a fee for him, you have to back pay him all the money that year. And they says no, so they let us go. Wigan couldn't afford it at the time, and they ended up playing in Sweden for the summer, because I'd missed so much football, and the Swedish season started through the summer. And by chance, a representative from Marbella Football Club saw me playing in the first week when I was in Sweden, and I'd not signed. And then they came in, and Marbella offered me, at the time it was a 5-year contract when I was 18. And I signed that 3 year with a 2 year option, and that was 94, and to this day, still the youngest British player to sign a professional contract. So, and I went there, and again, it was when the foreigner rule was in, and so only 3 foreigners could play.
Okay.
But again, I've gone there now with my head focused in this, and whether you like it or not, I'm 18, you're living in Porto Venus in Marbella. It's not the most conducive environment to get your head down, and again, not having that steadying influence near you. Again, you're making mistakes as a footballer, but not as a teenager.
And I love chatting to Peter, to Brendan and Julian. All 3 of them highlighted various different challenges that you're likely to face in a career in professional sport. And whether you're Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, or if you play for Whitby Town or Hartlepool United, the likelihood is you're not going to have a smooth journey. That's just not going to happen. And as I highlighted earlier at the start of the episode, regardless of whether you're mentally tough, talking, expressing yourself, getting out what's going on inside your head and your body is hugely important and hugely helpful. It's going to really help you solve some of the problems that are going on. And as well as doing that, it's actually going to also develop your mental toughness. It's going to develop your resilience. And as a sports psychology practitioner, my job is to make myself redundant and pass on to you tools that you can use again and again in the future. So when you come across bumps in the road, obstacles, you'll know exactly what you need to do to intervene. That's what it's all about, working as a sports psychologist. And on that note, in relation to tools, I'd like to make you aware that I've recently released an accelerator course, an online course to help you achieve your goals faster inside 60 minutes. That's right, in 1 hour, this online course has a range of exercises, a range of tools that can help assist you in your sport so you can develop mental toughness, develop resilience. When you're faced with these bumps in the road, these obstacles, it's going to help you move the needle and get the most out of your time and your talents. So check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and look under products. This course is available for a short period of time, so go on, get in quick and try and help yourself. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.